3 weeks, Mr. Lyle Goldstein, of the Mariners not losing a series. Just off the rip, again, we're live here Sunday, 7 o'clock Pacific, every single Sunday from here on out. You want to go find us on social, you're not already following us, at Marine Layer Pod on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok. You can find us on YouTube as well, where we're also live streaming. If you're on Instagram, go check out the YouTube channel. If you're on YouTube, go check out the Instagram, 7 o'clock every single Sunday to answer your guys' questions.
I was going to add to that right at the end. For those who are new and haven't been joining these on Sundays, the whole reason we want to do these is to take your guys' questions. We'll tee up some topics and talk about some things, but send us what you guys want us to talk about. That's the whole reason we do these, is to answer your guys' questions, whether it's Mariners, whether it's baseball, whether it's Drake and Kendrick Lamar. You pick. Like, you can send us whatever you want.
So that should be fun. Do you have an early leader in the clubhouse there before we get into Mariners?
Early leader in the clubhouse?
Drake and Kendrick.
Oh, we just talked about it before we hopped on here. I was going to say Kendrick until about an hour ago. And now it sounds like Kendrick Lamar was lying about a lot of the stuff he was rapping about, because Drake basically set him up and planted breadcrumbs for him to fall for a trap and lie. So maybe Drake is winning this thing.
Yeah, he might be. We're seeing some wild swings here, and a little tease. We might do some fan content related around that. So upcoming this upcoming weekend. So I'll lead this off before we get into questions. I'm excited. You and I are finally going to both be back at the ballpark this upcoming weekend, Saturday and Monday. I'll be there on Sunday as well, just not on the field, but back at home in Seattle this weekend. That should be fun. So if you're going to the ballpark Monday or Saturday this upcoming weekend against the A's on Saturday, or the Royals are Monday, we'll both be there. So come say hello.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm guessing more people will be there on Saturday just because Saturday games are more popular. So if you're around Saturday, either find us in the pen, shoot us a DM. As you guys know, we love meeting up with people. So let us know if you're going to be there.
Yeah. So that'll be awesome. I'm excited to get back.
And with that, mentioning TJ, building off of TJ's point, saying we might do some content around Drake and Kendrick Lamar. If you're going to be at either of those games, find us in the pen. Or if you just want to be in some of our fan content, DM us that you're going to be at the game, and we can set it up and we'll make it happen. So yeah, find us this weekend, point being.
Yeah, it's going to be some fun content. It's good. Like get to put our heads together to get some good stuff out there. So looking forward to seeing everyone at the ballpark. That should be a lot of fun. Let's get into M's questions. Where do you want to start? Where should we start?
There are some that are filing in here. Do you want to start with people in here? Like, somebody asked if the Jose Altuve play at first base today was dirty. I don't think so, but I think there was cause for reasoning from Scott Service to think that was interference. I don't think Jose Altuve was trying to take a swipe at Ty France or anything like that, but sure, there was a chance that could have been interference, and there was a real case for it.
It could be intentional, but not dirty.
That's true.
Like, he wasn't like, yeah, you're right. He wasn't trying to hurt Ty France. Could he conveniently had his arm in a spot where he could have knocked the ball out? Yeah. Like, certainly looked like it. But dirty, like, if he was like putting a spike in Ty's ankle, that'd be a little bit different than just sort of swatting the ball out. And in the end, Jose Altuve held an L, 2 L's this weekend. So, in the end, no one was hurt, and the M's won the series.
Yeah, it got real dicey in that last at bat of the game. He missed a home run by 4 feet, 5 feet? Whew. But hey, a win's a win.
Well, I'll take it, for a ballpark that gives homers way more than it should in those stupid Crawford boxes, I'll take the fact him missing one in that ballpark. Boo-hoo.
We got a good question on YouTube here. It's from Mitchell Hopkins. This is a good way to start it off. Where would you rank the Mariners among the other teams in Major League Baseball? So right now the Mariners are winning the AL West, but if they were in second place, they would not be in a wild card spot. There's some teams in the Central playing very well, and that's going to be something to monitor as the season goes on, because while the Rays might not be playing great right now, there's some teams in the AL Central that are balancing it out by playing well. But in terms of just rankings, look, the Mariners need to score more runs, but as we talked about on Friday's podcast, they've been a top 6 offense over the last 2 weeks by WRC plus and a few other categories too. So if you factor that in with the number 1 pitching staff in baseball and one of the best bullpens in baseball, over the last 2 weeks, I would put them in the top 6 or 7 teams in the league just off of what they've done in the last couple weeks. 6 straight series wins, the rotation, the bullpen, and an offense that's been better than people give it credit for. Yeah, I'd say, like, it's hard to say they're better than the Dodgers or the Braves, although they did beat the Braves in 2 of 3. I don't know if I put them over those guys. I don't know if I put them over the Orioles, but they're up there, man. Like right now, the way they're playing, they're in the top 7.
I was going to say top 10 clearly, right? And once you're in the top 10, you are a playoff team, as we highlighted on Friday's podcast. I mean, it's pretty clear watching this team. They look like a playoff contender, and playoff contenders are top 10 teams, right? That's usually how it ends up working out because of, the extra wild card spot they have now. If you're in the top 10, then you're a wild card contender. And, they've won all these series, rattled off all in a row. And in the end, like, even they got to a game today where they needed the offense to bail out the pitching a little bit. The pitching was still pretty darn good today, but there were 2 more mistakes than were usually made on the mound for the Mariners today, and the 2 home runs off of Bryce Miller. And what did the offense do? The offense that is, kind of been getting torn apart. They came through clutch. The third base platoon, the less talked about part of the third base platoon. Luis Urias comes through with a check swing single up the middle. Sometimes that's all you need, right? Sometimes that's all you need, an accident swing to put you on top. And then Big Cal Raleigh comes up and mashes a go-ahead home run. Personally, offensively, I'd like to see them score more runs that aren't home runs because they're almost too reliant on it right now. But they got the job done, and the offense scored enough to win. If you score 5 runs, that's an elite offense if you're scoring 5 a game. It worked out.
Yeah, you just got to convert a few more of those runs. First couple innings, when you're leaving a bunch of guys on base, it got a little dicey at the end. And sure, you score 4 or 5 runs in a game. Of course, that's a good offense. But they could just be converting a couple more of these opportunities. And obviously, while Jorge Polanco's starting to get going, while Luke Raley hit his first home run today, which was awesome, there are still impact guys in the lineup that have not truly gotten going yet. And when that happens, this offense is going to take another step forward. So it's good that they're starting to convert more opportunities, but there's still a little bit more they can do, and there's still guys in the offense that need to get going. I would say, okay, another question here, if we're going to stay on the pitching for a second. This is from Ryan Witham. Oh, what's up, Ryan? So this is from Ryan, and he says, is it possible to see us finish 1, 2, and 3 in AL Cy Young voting in terms of the Mariners? Because the Mariners have 3 top 3 Cy Young voters. So my first response to that is, who's getting left out of the 4? Who's the one guy that's not finishing top 3? Maybe you can respond, Ryan, and say which one that is. But yeah, I mean, that's unlikely. But the way they're pitching these days, I mean, somebody's probably going to regress a little bit. But that doesn't. They could all finish top 10. That's for sure.
Let's also remember who votes on this. It is unlikely. If this was the New York Yankees rotation, I think we'd be having a different conversation. But the Seattle Mariners, I have a hard time seeing have 1, 2, and 3 in the Cy Young, even if it's deserved. Which right now, if we stretch this out over 4 months, we're going to enter August and say, oh yeah, they have 3 guys who could. But the odds of that happening are slim. But it'd be fun. It would be fun. Historic.
If they were in New York, Boston, or LA, maybe it'd be more realistic. But
Yeah.
when you're tucked away in the Pacific Northwest and you're starting your games when most of these East Coast old school writers are going to sleep, unfortunately, doesn't always play your way. But do I think all 3 of those, do I think the Mariners could have 3 guys finish in the top 10? Yeah. Could the Mariners have 3 All-Stars out of this rotation? Also, yes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Here's a question from Philip on YouTube. So thanks for tuning in, Philip. Do you think Scott should have sat Bryce earlier to keep the streak of 21 consecutive games, or would have been 22, and it would have tied a record of starting pitchers below 2 earned runs? I mean, probably not. It's a little bit easier to manage these things in hindsight after watching Bryce give up the 2-run home run in the 7th inning. He was at a really low pitch count, and you'd think for how Bryce has pitched this year, and the finishing kick he's sort of had on his outings, you trust him to get through 7. I think you and I both expected him to get through 7 pretty easily. It stinks he didn't, but I'm not too heartbroken a streak comes to an end. You know why? Because they can just start another streak, and eventually the streak was going to end. There was no way they were going to keep that up. The fact they made it that long on that streak is remarkable, historic, that they managed to go that long, allowing 2 earned runs or less. You know how hard that is? Even with as good as pitching is these days, it is nearly impossible. So the fact that it happens eventually, you're going to leave a couple pitches over the plate and the guys are going to pull it in the air and it's going to go into the seats. Oh, well.
And this doesn't change the fact at all, too, about, again, let's keep doubling down how much better and improved Bryce Miller looks in year 2. The only difference today, it's basically the same story as what happened in his first outing of the year against the Red Sox, where overall he looked really good. There was just a couple of mistake pitches that were taken advantage of by, might I add, a couple of really good hitters. Well, John Singleton's not some established guy, but Kyle Tucker got him today. And it is very hard in Houston, despite what the Astros record is, to keep all of Altuve, Tucker, Jordan, and Bregman in check for 3 straight games. It's just, they're superstars for a reason. Somebody's probably going to get you at some point, and Tucker did today.
And you think about it this way, too. The Astros have been pretty good hitting the ball this season. Their pitching's been bad, but their offense has been really good this season. And those were probably the only 2 damage swings they did all series. Mm-hmm. The Astros runs in game 1 came on flukiness and bad decision-making in the field, and a squeeze play and an infield single and overall sloppiness. But if it was going to take until game 3 for the Astros to put 2 good damage swings on Mariners pitchers, period, that says a lot, right? You'll take on the other side 2 damage swings in 3 games for the other team. You're doing a pretty good job at that point.
Yeah, you are. I got to say, scrolling up on Instagram, we got a question from Uncle Dave 11. And I will say, I am shocked it took us this long to get to this question. TJ, I'm not picking on Dave here, but TJ and I had a debate before we started this live stream saying, how long is it going to take for somebody to send a question about Julio on this stream? Is it going to be over or under 5 minutes? I said under. We actually surpassed that. And the question is, should Julio move down in the lineup? He had a lot of opportunities to do damage today. He went 0 for 4. So it seems like every week when we have a live stream, there is discourse around somebody. I'm not even saying on this live stream. It just seems like it's on Mariners Twitter, whether it's Sebi Zavala, which was crazy for a guy that plays once a week. And then who else was in the discourse a little bit? Somebody else was. Maybe not. Maybe
probably
it was
Urias.
Maybe Urias. But now it's circled back to number 44. Garver. And now we've circled back to Julio. We were getting some ridiculous comments about Julio today. We can talk about the fact that he's struggling, and we can talk about the fact that I'm sure nobody's more frustrated about it than Julio himself, but that obviously people expect a little bit more out of Julio than what he's currently doing. Move him down in the lineup. I don't know. Is there somebody you definitively want hitting second right now, or do you just let him figure it out?
This would be an easier decision, I think, if JP was back, because, I even talked about it with my brother earlier. It's like, if JP comes back and Julio's still swinging like this, would you think Rojas JP 1-2?
You could.
You could probably sell it. You can't move Rojas back down in the lineup now. You cannot. You'd be doing your offense a disservice at this point. So that's really where the question arises.
Although JP's still 2 weeks away? He's progressing really well, which is the good news. And it doesn't sound like this is going to be long term, but there's still a little bit of time to go before he's going to get back. So I don't like
how much. So I think about when they did this last year. You remember when they moved him down last year, right? He was doing this exact same thing last year, and they moved him down to the 6th hole for one game. And then they moved him back up in the lineup. And even if he was still struggling, he stayed in that spot the rest of the year, right? I don't think moving him down is going to fix it. Julio's got to fix it. His spot in the lineup, I don't think does, because regardless of if he's hitting second or if he's hitting 6th, there are still some struggling hitters in the lineup that would be around him. And the pressure, I guess, to come through and you realize other guys in the lineup like him are struggling, it doesn't really change that much. It just changes how many times you're hitting a game.
Right. Look, he has to take advantage of balls of pitches that he's given out over the plate. He's not doing a ton of damage right now. He had that streak about a week or two or a week and a half ago where he was racking up all the multi-hit games, and it felt like, oh, hits are starting to be strung together. The power will come next. He had the home run in Texas. It started to feel like, okay, he's unlocked something. And now it's reverted back to a little bit of what we saw the first couple weeks of April, where he's still looking to find that true source of power. It is unfortunate that he started slow again, and he's going to have to catch up to some of those fastballs on the inner half. It seems like that's given him some problems so far. That was a little bit of the case last year, those fastballs in on his hands, the breaking balls for sure. But you have to bet on your best player figuring it out. It's not fun right now for anybody. And again, I'm sure nobody's more frustrated about it than Julio himself. But moving him down in the lineup, like TJ just said, doesn't feel like the sound option, especially when there's other guys struggling in the lineup. It's all going to be a mishmash of guys attempting to figure it out. So you might as well just leave him where he is.
So let's play an exercise in. Let's say Julio, after this series, has an epiphany, and he has a great 2 weeks until JP Crawford comes back. How are you building the lineup?
Do you put Julio at 3, or are you moving him further down than that? I mean, because the problem is now Polanco's heated up. Jorge Polanco over the last 10 days or so is crushing it. And it's great to see him really start to figure some things out. He's hitting the ball with power. He's hitting the ball in the gap. We know he's still walking. This is great. The last 8 to 10 games is the exact version of Jorge Polanco we were all expecting when the Mariners traded for him. And you knew what he was doing in the first month wasn't going to be the Jorge Polanco we saw all year. I know people have PTSD from Colton Wong, from Adam Frazier, and say, oh, are we going to trade for another second baseman that struggles? No, Polanco is such a step above those guys. He's such a good hitter that he was not going to continue doing that. Now we're seeing it. So if you have those three at 1, 2, and 3, Rojas, JP, Polanco, if Cal's 4, maybe Julio's 5 until he figures it out.
Maybe.
It just feels like
Julio out of the top 3 of the lineup feels wrong.
Right. So then in that case, you just leave him at 2. So then it would be Rojas, Julio, Polanco, Cal. JP can hit 5 or 6 for now. Yeah. If JP goes crazy too, like he did last year, and there's no reason to believe he won't revert back to what he was doing last year, then yeah, he'll move back up in the lineup eventually too. But for the time being, when he gets back, feels like it may look like that.
So JP finds his 2023 form. Would you consider Rojas 1, Julio 2, JP 3? Say it would be nice. Like it would be good if Mitch Garver then or Ty France were on fire. That would be an easy cleanup spot. So you go left, right, and then you go back to Polanco, and then you do the rest of the lineup like that.
I do like Polanco hitting 3rd, especially he's a switch hitter.
Yeah, I do too. So then you could, at that point, so you'd keep Polanco 3rd, and then like you said, you would ideally, I guess, in that case, if you were trying to go left, right, you would then still put Garver or France cleanup if they were hitting well, and then you put JP 5, and then you'd put Cal a spot behind them.
Right.
So
I do want to debunk something though before we move on to the next question. I'm not saying it was necessarily anybody in the live stream, but there's discourse around Twitter, social media, period, right now, that the reason Julio's not hitting is because he's not working hard at it. That could not be more false. Look, Julio's not playing like his best self right now. It's not because he's not working at it. I put out a tweet today after Luke Raley hit his home run, talking about how Luke Raley is always out getting early work, which is true. When we get to the ballpark, we usually get there fairly early. We try to set up early because we're trying to catch as many players as we can to do some content. There's guys out on the field early doing early work, and it's usually the same group. You usually see Demo out there. Josh Rojas is usually out there. Sebi's out there. Luke Raley's out there. If I remember right, Dom Canzone's usually out there when he's healthy. But point being, sometimes the guys will shuffle in and out for who's getting early work. Now with Luke Raley is always out on the field putting in early work. The dude wants, you can tell how much he cares, and you can tell the dude works his tail off. But with that tweet, simply a tweet about Luke Raley, we start to get all these replies saying, why doesn't Julio do that? Why isn't Julio out taking BP? And then there's replies to those replies saying, well, because he must think he's a god or he walks on water. And it's like, no, guys, like that's not it. But like, so I'm going to give you a little bit of a news flash here. This has been the case when Julio's been hotter than the sun, and this is the case when he struggled. Julio doesn't hit on the field much. Most of the work he does is in the cage downstairs. He does cage work, and he's not the only guy that does that. I don't think Cal Raleigh does a ton of on-field BP. There's a few other guys on the roster that don't do a ton of on-field BP. They simply hit in the cage. That's what they prefer. That's what works best with their routine. So, look, I'm not saying people can't be frustrated that Julio's not playing like Julio right now, but it's not because he doesn't work hard. And I can promise you it's not because he's not on the field for early BP. That's just not what his routine is. So I just wanted to debunk that a little bit before we move on.
Well, I'm glad you got that out of your system.
Yeah. I mean, the replies were wild.
Sorry, finish up.
No, just like the replies we were getting today were wild. We got some crazy DMs about like why is Julio not playing well? And again, replies to tweets. So I just wanted to debunk that.
And yeah, I'll add on the last thing on this subject. He is not going to AAA.
No. Like we got DMs like that over the last couple days and replies on Twitter.
It's like seriously, if that thought has crossed your mind, I genuinely want you to sit there and think, what will Julio Rodriguez accomplish in AAA? When we watch some of the performances, what people do down there in AAA, like Mike Ford slugging. What did Mike Ford slug in Tacoma last year?
Close to a 1,000 OPS. Jake Shiner put up an over 900 OPS all year. He was awesome, but he never got called up to the big leagues. The reason is because the competition is nowhere near what big league competition is. Now Shiner's playing overseas this year. But yeah, like that's a guy who had a 900 OPS basically all year.
Yeah, Julio going down and putting up a 1,500 OPS against guys who aren't big leaguers does him no good.
No. Okay, moving on. I like this question. This is on YouTube from Taylor Jones. He says, which Mariners will get long-term extensions by the end of 2024? I would like to start this by saying I hope guys do. I would love to see more guys get extended. If it's going to be one guy, we were banging the drum for this in the offseason. I could not be banging the drum more than I possibly can right now for Logan Gilbert to get extended. You have got to extend that guy. He has clearly taken a massive step forward here in 2024. He is not a Boris client. He feels like a guy that he's not old, but he's 27. He feels like a guy that you could get a pre-arb extension done with, or I guess, no, he hit his first year of arbitration this year,
I think he's in ARB 1.
Yeah, okay, he's ARB 1. Point being, this feels like a guy that could possibly be open to an extension. Now, I'm not saying people like Cal Raleigh and George Kirby aren't, but we know Cal's a Boris guy. We don't know the type of money George Kirby's going to demand. The Logan Gilbert one really feels like it's a match made in heaven, both for Logan and for the Mariners. If I had to put money on the next guy that's extended and got a significant extension, I would bet it's Logan Gilbert, and I think it makes the most sense to target Logan Gilbert.
I think personality-wise, Logan Gilbert makes the most sense. I see a comment, what about Cal? So Logan makes the most sense. First of all, because pitching is that valuable, and he seems like he'd be the most likely to. So yes, priority one, oldest, furthest along in his arbitration, personality matches make sense. Yes, okay, slam dunk. That one, not like there's not much debate around that, especially how Logan's pitched this year. Yeah, if Logan Gilbert goes out and wins the Cy Young, yeah, they should probably sign him, well, before he wins the Cy Young, because he's going to get way more expensive after. They're worried about how much he's going to cost, and it's not going to be cheap. So I see some stuff here about Cal Raleigh as well. I think some good points have been brought up about the Mariners and Cal Raleigh. I think you and I both want Cal Raleigh catching for the Mariners as long as he possibly can. Now, how much longer is that, though? Like, so he's in his prime right now. Cal's 27, right? He's got his 3 years of arbitration still left, I believe, right? Fully? Mm-hmm. 3 full years?
Was Logan an ARB 1 guy this year, or was he Super 2? I think he was Super 2.
So would this be but Logan missed the first month of 21, so it would have been 22, 23, and now here in 24 is third full season.
Oh, so after this year, yeah, he'll be ARB 1. Yeah.
No, this year would be his ARB 1 if he was a Super 2.
Oh, yeah, after 2024, right?
No, this year.
All right, I'm going to look this up.
Okay. But so the question for Cal Raleigh, who I believe hits his first year of arbitration next year, I believe. Either that or he's ARB1. But by the time Cal Raleigh's a free agent, he's going to be 30. And the question the Mariners and the rest of you ask yourself about Cal Raleigh is how long after the age of 30 is he going to continue to catch? Because his extension right now would be based on him catching. But if he's not going to catch after he hits free agency, then how much money do you want to pay for that? It's a crummy business out here for catchers. I mean, it really does suck. And at that point, you could consider moving Cal and his bat to a different position on the field, most likely first base or DH, like Mitch Garver is currently occupying at age 33. But at this point, if they were trying to get an extension done, it would be at the catcher rate. And yeah, if they would want, by the time Cal's 30, they want Harry Ford back there catching instead because he's younger and has less wear and tear on his body, then it's like a whole different number that we're asking about. So it's not as easy as going up to Logan Gilbert right now and saying this dude's probably going to be good until he's 35. Not saying Cal Raleigh won't, but he won't be a catcher until he's 35. That's almost certain because it's rare for guys to be full-time catchers for that long. What Salvador Perez is doing, for example, is pretty rare, continuing to catch every single day and into his mid-30s.
Yeah, it's crazy. Spot Rack, Spotrack, however you said it, they changed their interface on their site a little bit. Yeah, it says ARB avoided with Logan, and he's making a little over $4 million. So I'm going to assume that means you're right that he is ARB1.
Yeah, he's in ARB1.
Okay. So point being, there is time to extend Logan Gilbert, but he has started his arbitration phase of his career. And I think you're right. And everything you just said is true. It is a tough business for catchers. But if you're looking from how the Mariners may approach it, when you have a 21-year-old in Harry Ford, who we assume will be up next year at some point in 2025, that may be how they approach things. Maybe Cal would take an extension and still be okay moving positions long-term. Like, that is possible. But I think the Logan Gilbert one makes the most sense. And I'm not saying George Kirby doesn't, but it does seem like there's a chance Logan Gilbert would be more open to an extension. We don't have any inside information on that. This is just us going off of what we think. And it seems like Logan Gilbert would be the prime target for somebody to extend. So I think both of us are in agreement here. The next guy to be extended, if we had to put a bet on somebody, it'd be on Logan Gilbert.
How many guys do we think they will extend? It won't be all of them.
No,
that's for certain.
But they've extended Julio, they've extended Luis.
Yep.
Of Cal, George, and Logan, can they get 2 done?
I'm going to say no.
I feel good about them getting 1 done. I feel like they can get 1 of those done. 2, we'll see. And if it's 2, I would guess it's Logan. And honestly, I would guess it's Cal. Despite being a Boris guy, Boris has done himself no favors this offseason. Whether Cal one day changes agencies, or if Scott Boras just becomes more open to players taking extensions, they could get that one done. And a reason I feel more confident about the Cal one is you can tell how much Cal loves the organization and is determined to win here. You hear him talk about it all the time. Yeah. So that would be my order. Is I would guess Logan, then Cal second, Kirby third. I don't know if they're going to extend JP Crawford again. He's a free agent in a couple years. If you're looking at other guys that could get extended, that would be the other one, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It probably would. So
who else in this core would be an extension candidate? You can talk about the 2 young arms, Bryce Miller and Brian Wu, but those guys are so far away from free agency that I don't think you're worried about them. They have
5 more years after this year, each of them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
So we'll see. I want to tee you up, speaking of young guys, on a point you brought up to me earlier this week. Aaron on YouTube, I think this was misworded a little bit. Is Tyler Locklear an April call-up, judging that it's now May? He can't be an April call-up, but in the general sense of an early season call-up, is Tyler Locklear an early call-up, or could we see him sooner? I guess, let me reword this. How likely is it, do you think, that Tyler Locklear sees the big leagues, let's say before the All-Star break?
Unlikely, because he hasn't played that many AA games, and you have to give Ty France more time than this. Let's be clear about this again. Ty France's underlying numbers and peripherals, if you look at his baseball savant page, suggests that he should heat up, and he should heat up soon. And I'll give everybody a reminder too. It took JP Crawford till about June last year to really get going and see the JP Crawford that we all remember of JP Crawford in 2023. So I think we've got to give Ty much more of a sample size to see what all these offseason adjustments have done for him. Now, by the All-Star break, if it's at the All-Star break and we're approaching the trade deadline and Ty's still not really hitting, yeah, it becomes an option under the assumption that Locklear is still hitting in Double-A. I don't know if that's a guy that they'd put in Triple-A first. I don't know how much that would do for him, playing some games in Tacoma and seeing PCL pitching rather than just staying in Arkansas. But if Tyler Locklear keeps his OPS above 900 and he's, we asked Scott Service about Locklear down at spring training. And what he said is Locklear is honestly a bat to ball first guy first that additionally has power. So they really value his hit tool and they also value the power that comes with it. But that says that they really believe in Tyler Locklear, the hitter, not just as a power guy, but a hitter. So if he continues to develop and show that he is exactly that down in Double-A, and Ty France doesn't really figure it out, I can't promise it happens. That jump from Double-A to the big leagues is tough. And that would be a lot to put on a guy right in the thick of a playoff race to come up and essentially fill the production of a big league caliber first baseman. But is it impossible? No. Tyler Locklear is crushing the baseball at every single level. Almost nothing seems to have phased him so far. And his development is going to be very, very interesting to watch because how they manage him, it's going to be interesting. So before the All-Star break, I would say no. After that, there are variables that depend on what his status will be, but more possible after the All-Star break.
If you had to predict in September, is it more likely he's in Tacoma or Seattle?
Probably Tacoma. I was going to say, could he be a bat off the bench in the postseason? But the problem with that is since the Mariners run an 8-man bullpen, their positional depth is short. You have to have a backup catcher. So that's one. And that's essentially 3 other guys. And how we've, and I should add, one of those 3 other guys is the other side of the third base platoon. So it's really 2 other guys. And how the Mariners have clearly liked to approach having those last 2 guys on the bench and who they are as players are guys that are versatile. The Dylan Moores, the Sam Haggertys, he's not up in the big leagues, but the Samad Taylor types who can play a bunch of different positions and who have some speed. Locklear can only play one position in the field, and that's first base. Otherwise, he's DHing. I don't know if they would roster Locklear and Garver and Ty France all at the same time, unless you think Locklear is such a good hitter and he's so developed, he can legitimately help this team get over the top. And if that's the case, he'd be in the lineup every day. So I would guess, just thinking this out here and thinking out loud, I would guess Tacoma, and it's more likely we'd see him in 2025. But again, like a lot of this depends on Ty France, and a lot will depend on what they do at the trade deadline.
And Sebi too would be on the bench. Your backup catcher. So that's 4 guys who would be shoehorned into one position, essentially. One position that they can play, and offering no base running and no ability to go do anything else besides hit. So that's a risk you run. And watching how the roster operates with a Dylan Moore and someone else fast on the roster with the ability to do that, like Samad Taylor, Sam, or pick your fast guy, Clase, if he's back up on the roster by then. I think they like the idea of that a little bit more than having Tyler Locklear to hit twice a week. It's the same argument with Harry Ford. It doesn't really do Tyler Locklear much good to come up and sit on the bench at the big leagues. They want him to just go down there and get at bats, whether it be at AAA, whether it be at AA. So if he's not playing every day, I have a hard time seeing him being up on the big league roster. And it stinks for him. There's no open spot. And if Ty France turns it around and starts hitting, then there clearly won't be a spot for him on the roster this year because he's not taking over at third base, can't play short or second, and he wouldn't anyway over those 2 that are currently there. And if Ty France starts hitting at first, he's out of luck. There's nowhere for him to play.
Right, unless Garver, I guess, really doesn't hit. The problem is they're not going to move off of Garver or anything like that. He's making way too much money, and he's way, way too proven to do something like that. Then, like, if Locklear's hitting that well, maybe, and Garver still isn't, maybe Garver just becomes a bench bat and Locklear gets called up. Him and Ty France split time between first base and DH, and Locklear gets some at bats that way. But again, that's still hampering your bench, because then you have Mitch Garver on the bench who essentially can only hit and maybe in an absolute pinch play first base.
And the other thing you ask yourself there, so Mitch Garver, let's say him struggling at that point, he'd be about an 80 WRC plus. I'm not exactly sure what he's up to now, but he's still sub 100. Is Tyler Locklear right now at the big league level an 80 WRC plus guy? Can he manage that?
This second, or what he's doing by August 1st?
Like when he gets called up August 1st?
If Locklear continues to hit the way he's hitting right now and gets called up on August 1st, I would say there's a shot he could be a productive big league bat. But
like above 100?
If there's no level of the minor leagues that's phasing him, you got to pull him up at some point, right? But again, there may not be a roster spot for him. That's a different question. You're asking me what Tyler Locklear could do himself, regardless of scenario, if he got called up. Yeah, I think if he keeps hitting like this is a guy that has a chance to be a really good bat. I'm not saying he's going to be this, but I'm pretty sure there was draft comps to Pete Alonso for Tyler Locklear when he got taken in the draft out of ECU. So I'm not saying he's going to come up and be Pete Alonso, but I am saying that at some point, if he keeps hitting like this, you're going to have to give him a chance. It may not be this year, it may be next year, but I think if this continues for Locklear, yeah, he's got a chance to be a pretty good big league bat.
Here's a good question coming in on YouTube. This is from Flint Eastwood. What right now, from what you've seen from this roster so far through a month, what is your number one trade target? What's your number one position trade target?
Yeah, didn't somebody in here say in the YouTube comments say Luis Robert?
It is technically said Lewis Robert, but yes, Luis Robert.
Our favorite guy, which for those who don't know that little story, early in the offseason, we put together a wish list. We said we wanted to see the Mariners trade for Luis Robert. We thought we actually put together a pretty fair package, and White Sox fans were so pissed when we put it together. I actually thought it was a fair package, but people were so mad about it.
Do you think they take the package now?
Oh, yeah, because guess what? The package we put together for Luis Robert, look at what other blue chip guys have gotten in prospect return. Look what Juan Soto got in prospect return. Now, less club control, but point being, I don't think the package would be that lofty at this point for a Luis Robert trade. I could be wrong. But anyway, enough of him. To answer the question, what position would you target the most? Right now, I guess I would say an outfielder, either an outfielder or a first baseman / DH, or not even DH, because we're banking that Garver is going to turn this thing around. I think he will. But so, yeah, I guess I'd say first base or outfield.
Yeah, corner outfielder.
Mm-hmm.
Probably
corner outfielder. Now,
so, we would have to get, we get to the end of the season, and then we evaluate the health of Luke Raley, of Mitch, see how Dom Canzone's doing. Can he pick it back up? That's like the one spot where you could add, because I don't on the infield right now, you're not touching third base, you can't touch short, can't touch second, and first you could trade for someone, but you have in-house options. You have your current big league first baseman whose hit data looks pretty good, and then we just talked about Tyler Locklear, who's destroying the baseball in AA. But then you move into the outfield, the options are a little bit less, and you got 3 spots out there to fill instead of 1 at each.
Mm-hmm. But it would have to be some very calculated moves, and you'd have to think hard about some things, because Luke Raley does not have options. Obviously, Mitch Haniger's a big leaguer. And let's not forget in the couple weeks that Canzone's been on the IL, that was your best hitter before he got hurt. And the Mariners could not stop raving about how awesome Dom Canzone looked over the offseason adjustments that he's made when he got into spring. I think when he comes back, there is no doubt in anybody's mind within the Mariners organization that Dom Canzone's going back into the lineup just about every single day. There's a right-handed pitcher on the mound, and maybe some days with lefties too.
So here's the easiest scenario to see is trading for a reliever at the deadline. I think that with the brash news, given that we'll throw out the scenario he doesn't pitch this year. I loved when Ty Dane Gonzalez came on our show this past Wednesday, and he said Why not trade for Sewald? It was a joke at first, but then you think about it. Why not trade back for Paul Sewald if the Diamondbacks aren't playing well? First of all, you wouldn't have to give up the same return that the Diamondbacks gave up to get him last year. How seamless would Paul Sewald fit right back into this bullpen? It would make you feel so much more comfortable. And I'm going to guess from some of our comments, all respect to you guys, I know not everyone's a huge fan of Matt Brash, and he's sometimes a little erratic. It doesn't, to some people, throw enough strikes, and the stuff moves maybe a little bit too much to be, fully comfortable, almost more the Ryan Stanek level of control around the strike zone. Well, if Paul Sewald came back, there you go. That makes that idea you had at the beginning of the season, that this being the best Mariners bullpen of all time, if you get Gregory Santos back, let's say in June, and he's fully healthy and he's fully throwing and he throws for the rest of the year, and then you bring back Paul Sewald at the trade deadline, I think the best of all time is back on.
That would be so much fun. And to trade back for Paul Sewald, if the Diamondbacks are not in it, who's only going to have 2 months of time by that point before he hits free agency, what would that even cost? I mean, you just said it's not going to cost anything close to what the Mariners got back for him. I'm talking for 2 months of a reliever in his mid-30s who hasn't even pitched yet this year because of injury, some mid-level prospect down in the minor leagues somewhere. I don't think it would cost much at all.
Yeah. Ben Williamson?
I don't even know if it would cost that. Maybe I was going to say maybe somebody like, I don't know, throw a name, Michael Morales, somebody like that.
Yeah. Not that much.
Right. So yeah, like you could do it.
Sewald's getting old. Yes, he is, but you would only be committed to Paul Sewald for 2 months.
That's it.
It's a rental reliever. And if you wanted to keep him, sign him to a 1-year extension after the season, I'm sure he'd be open to it. He likes pitching here.
Yeah, he does. I got to reel back to something you said just a minute ago, though. There are people out there that don't like Matt Brash. Like, is that a real thing? I hope nobody in here is serious.
You read our comments.
I hope it's just people trolling. I hope it's just people kind of angrily commenting. Matt Brash was the 4th best reliever in baseball last year, behind guys like Felix Bautista, who had, before he got injured, was on pace to have one of the best reliever seasons in I don't know how long. 4th. He had 2 wins as a reliever. The guy has the nastiest sweeper in baseball. He throws 100 miles an hour. He's deadly. I hope that's not a real thing. I hope if you're out there commenting saying you're not a Matt Brash fan, I think you have some things to rethink. So
I've sold Matt Brash wouldn't have sold like Spire and Thornton did. What?
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, I don't really know what that means either. But
yeah. So
regardless, the Mariners are worse off without Matt Brash. That is a stone cold fact.
Now, getting Gregory Santos back in what we think will be a few weeks will be huge. But if they could just add one more arm additionally to that, if you had a bullpen at the deadline that was Munoz, Santos, Stanek, Paul Sewald, Gabe Spire, Saucedo, Trent Thornton, and one other, probably both. Yeah, I'm down for that. Yeah. And you know what? We haven't even mentioned the name Carlos Vargas in a while. He gave up a run or two the other day, but aside from that, he has looked awesome in Tacoma. His ERA has been low. He's throwing gas. That could. Now add him into the fold too and see what happens. So,
do we know we're getting the next update on Brash?
Usually Hollander gives updates on the first game of each home series. That's how he's been doing it so far this year. I would assume the next time there will be an update will be Friday. Hollander also said in that media session he doesn't know exactly when that meeting Brash is having with the doctors was. They said they don't have an exact date for it yet. So has Brash even had the meeting yet? We don't know. But the next time Hollander will give injury updates, period, I would assume will be Friday. And by then he'll either update what the status of Brash is, or he'll just say, okay, he hasn't had the meeting yet. We're still waiting.
Lyle, in the YouTube comments, I'm going to give a shout out to Aaron, who says, quote, I legit have a coworker who does not think Andres Munoz is good. Aaron, could you respond and let us know? Did he give you any reasoning for it? I'd
You
love to
know,
know.
I shouldn't be that surprised considering when we were trying to do everything in our power to get Shohei to Seattle this winter, there were people in our comments saying, "Oh, Shohei Ohtani is overrated." So why am I surprised?
Well, Lyle, he can only hit this year.
Yeah, right. I mean, this could be a whole different topic for another day. I think he is straight up the best athlete in the world. I don't even mean baseball player. I think athlete. There's nobody doing what he does. Kylian Mbappe is not playing goalie. Patrick Mahomes isn't playing defense. Yeah. Anyway.
Can the Seahawks sign him to play linebacker? It'd be one way to get him to Seattle.
Yeah, there you go. That would be something. But yeah, I don't think there's anybody in the world that's a better athlete than him right now, than Shohei. So
do we have do you know so Brian Wu, I'm guessing he's getting one more start?
No, I think that's it. He just made one on Saturday or yesterday. So that Hollander said he was supposed to get like a week ago, one final rehab start, which is the one he made on Saturday. He went 5 shutouts, struck out 6 guys. I think he's ready. So Emerson Hancock slated to make a start Tuesday. I would assume that would line up that Hancock Wu slate to go again on Sunday afternoon against the A's when you're supposed to be there for Mother's Day. I would assume after a week off from Brian Wu from making his rehab outing that he just made with the Rainiers yesterday, that will be his return to action, if I had to guess. Because unless there's no off days between now and Sunday, you're not going to jumble the rotation around. Plus, why not give a guy that's coming back from an injury a little bit of extra rehab time and rest time before he makes his first major league start of the season? I would guess we will see Brian Wu on Sunday against the A's.
Okay. Yeah, and that makes sense. You give him a little bit of extra rest, and Emerson gets one more start. So that makes sense.
And in addition to all that, we'll see if they do this or not. But after Emerson makes his start on Tuesday, don't be shocked either if right after that they send him down to Tacoma, and for a few days before the Wu outing, they pull up an extra bullpen arm or an extra bat just to have somebody else on the roster.
Right. Starcadian on YouTube says, if Shohei is the best athlete in the world, how come he doesn't play in the field? Well, he does play in the field, Starcadian. I appreciate the comment, but he literally plays the most important position on the field. He touches the ball for every single play he's out there. That's about as important as it gets.
And he did play the outfield in Japan. He was good at it too. He had a crazy arm,
and he could in America too. It's not like he can't.
Yeah. There's only so much you can ask out of a guy though. Like that, you're really talking about running somebody into the ground though, if you do that with Ohtani and try to have him play the outfield. But yes, I had this conversation with a few people a couple weeks ago that basically know absolutely nothing about baseball. They're soccer people, and they use the totally uneducated and pretty much downright dumb argument of how could a baseball player be the best athlete in the world? Like baseball players just stand around, as if, again, that is the logic of somebody that does not watch any baseball. And I said to them, when Kylian Mbappe learns to play goalie and becomes top 5 in the world at it while also still playing striker or midfield, yeah, we can start the conversation that he's a better athlete than Ohtani. I don't think it's any question at this point, to be honest. So, yeah. But yes, that's why he doesn't play the field. Somebody just said
rant.
Yeah, but a couple more before we wrap the live stream up here, because it's been close to an hour. Somebody just said Mariners equals Kendrick in the Instagram comments. Now, is that good or bad?
That was probably before 5:30 this evening.
Well, somebody just sent it.
Yeah, I know. The Mariners were Kendrick before 5:30 this evening. After 5:30, they actually switched back to Drake's side.
Yeah.
Because the Mariners, all they do is win, but Kendrick and Drake have been trading wins and losses at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you'll have to clarify that to Young Mackie, who just sent it to us on Instagram. Is that supposed to be good or bad? I don't even know at this point.
Yeah.
Let's do
here. Let's question from Aaron. We both condition on this, Lyle. What do we expect out of Wu this year when he finally plays? And I think it's very interesting because we've seen the step that Bryce Miller has taken forward, home runs today aside. in his sophomore season. So the pressure's kind of on Bryan Woo, who's in your eyes, in the eyes of a lot of people, has gotten more love than Bryce Miller has. So the bar's almost higher at some point. He'll throw less innings, but the bar for excellence is going to probably be up there with Bryce, even though that's kind of unfair because he hasn't pitched at all this year because he's been hurt, right?
Right.
If Bryce can take a step forward, and Brian's a guy who has an arsenal that's arguably deeper with better overall quote unquote metrics than what Bryce Miller throws out there, the bar's it's probably unrealistically high, which is almost a lose-lose in his case. Or sorry, it's either you're really winning or you're really losing at that point.
Right. This is a good final question to wrap up on here, because the next time we do a live stream, we assume Bryan Woo will have made his first start of the season. It's going to be about what he does against left-handed bats. That was the storyline for Bryce Miller coming into this year. He's really managed it well. That's going to be the story for Woo as well. Because what we saw Bryce Miller do this offseason is he developed that splitter. Some of his breaking balls got a little bit better, and now he has found pitches to keep left-handed bats off balance. We know with Bryan Woo, his two fastballs are awesome. Like that four-seamer and two-seamer he throws, they're deadly, man. And that's why people are so high on him. Now, the question with Woo becomes not just getting the lefties out, but has he taken some steps forward with some of his secondary pitches that are going to keep some left-handed bats off balance? Against righties had all the fits in the world against them. What are the left-handed bats going to do against him? And with that, if he manages the lefties and how well he does so is going to dictate his success. If he manages lefties, we're talking about a jump for Bryan Woo that is similar to Bryce Miller. We're talking about, while Bryan Woo may throw less innings, we're talking about this guy putting up some crazy numbers and a pretty high strikeout rate. So I keep talking about, I love watching Bryan Woo pitch. I love the idea of who he can be as a pitcher. There have been articles out there detailing just what he can be as a modern day pitcher and how fun he is to watch. So that ceiling's high for Bryan Woo, like you said, this year. And if he can manage the lefties, you're talking about a guy who can also put up an ERA in the low threes, if not lower. So I can't wait for Bryan Woo to get back. And I think the expectations, they're going to be high, as they should be.
It's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
It's we're looking forward to him coming back this week, and no pressure, Brian, because it seemingly is now on. But if there's any, recollection to how he's looked in AAA, I think he's ready to come back, and I think he's ready to come and strike out a few big league hitters.
I mean, the dude has had it almost looks like he's not even I don't want to say this in the wrong way. I was going to say it looks like he's not even trying. That's not the right word, because he's so effortless with his fastballs. It's the most effortless 95 you'll ever see. It almost looks like he's bored making these starts. Yeah. That's the right terminology I was looking for. He's sitting there down in AAA being like, these hitters are legitimately not good enough for me, for my strength and abilities. Because he did not give up a single run in any three of his rehab outings. He was striking out the world in all three of those outings. I think he's ready to go. He's clearly, as long as there's no medical setbacks, he's clearly past the stage of needing rehab outings. And I think he's ready to kick it into full gear here. And I'm guessing this upcoming Sunday, he will.
Should be really exciting. We're looking forward to that this week. Just a reminder to those of you still in here, if you're going to be at the park this upcoming weekend, Lau and I will both be there on Saturday and on Monday. We'll be hanging out in the pen. Come say hi. Come flag us down. Get on the mini mic interview. We'll have some fun topics this week. It's going to be good getting back in Seattle. The Marine Layer Pod back together at the ballpark. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is. And I'll add too, for those who might not be there on those 2 dates, I will still be there Friday, but it'll be just me. TJ won't be there. TJ will be there on Sunday. Now he's going with some family. However, I'm sure if you see TJ walking around the ballpark on Sunday, he will be happy to say hi. So
yeah, absolutely. So just to make sure you're following us on all socials at Marine Layer Pod on Instagram. Of course, if you're watching us on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok as well. Go find us on YouTube, Marine Layer Podcast on YouTube. We're here live every single Sunday at 7 o'clock Pacific to answer all your guys' questions for the week. So make sure you go follow us. If you're on Instagram, check out the YouTube channel. If you're watching us on YouTube, go give us a follow on Instagram. All the support helps us a ton. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to you next week.